And this session, we are focusing on messaging. And I talked with you guys earlier throughout the training series about making sure you can come up with that personal story and that personal narrative in preparation for this messaging training session. Because I think it'll be important for you guys to see sort of what this year is all about, what the campaigns are going to be talking about, and how you can tie that into your personal narrative and strengthen your message out there. So today we are joined by Ellen Dumb, who is a communications consultant that has worked numerous campaigns across the state. She is a real expert in some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about today. So I'm incredibly excited that she's here to join us. As normal, and we're going to just sort of jump right into this. If you guys have a question, we have a couple people joining us here at CDP headquarters. And if you have a question online, feel free to use the raise your hand function on the webinar, or you can write in the chat box, either or. And I will be checking periodically to make sure that we're answering any questions that might arrive. We are also going to be recording this for our online candidate training website that I hope you guys have had a chance to visit. We will make sure that we put the PowerPoint presentation up there as well. And a recording of this will be made available of hopefully not so much my awful voice, but a little bit more discussions, because I'm sure you guys are tired from hearing from me. So without further ado, I'd like to get into this because it's some really good stuff to talk about, and so we don't have to be here too late tonight. But I would like to introduce Ellen, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Jen. I really appreciate you guys having me. And thanks to everybody for, number one, just running and being a part of Colorado. I think that's important. I think we ought to talk about what this year is all about and the messages that are specific to an off-year election. As we know, off-year elections are not always as friendly to us as they can be in the presidential elections. So I think it's important to note the differences and meeting the voters where they are. A little nod to the Benenson Strategy Group, who did the research for which some of this is based on. So with that, I think the first thing is that we need to know what our target audience is. Again, different than in a presidential election. The 2014 voters will be older. They're going to be less progressive. They're going to be more pragmatically focused. And a note that our side is less motivated. Financial instability has made voters pretty insecure about what's going on around them. I think that if you could explain the mood of the voters, if you've ever seen a Frankenstein movie with villagers with torches, it's a little bit about what we're dealing with right now. They're not very happy with anyone, and luckily they're unhappy with the other side as much as they are with us. They really want some pragmatic answers, and they're tired of hearing about the partisan bickering. So I think we need to keep that in mind as we move forward. I think the one thing that given the horrible economic stuff that we've worked through in the last many years since 2008, I think we need to understand the impacts to real people. They really are feeling squeezed from both sides. They think that there are the wealthy who are getting all the breaks. They're also very upset with the poor, or what they perceive to be handouts to the poor. And so there's a lot of resentment. And what we used to call the middle class, I'm not sure a lot of people even feel like they're part of the middle class anymore. They sort of think of themselves as the working families of the world. So I think it's really important to acknowledge what they've been through for the last many years and not congratulate them, but acknowledge that they have survived a lot of things since 2008. And the important thing is they're here now. It may not be as great as what they want, but it's time to congratulate them for at least being survivors. Voters are feeling very abandoned by political leaders who forget where they came from. Again, that whole all politics is local thing is really important, and people feel a connection to the community, and they need to feel like you're there too, and understand what it is that they are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. They're really frustrated with the people who only play either end of the spectrum. They've heard the bickering, they see it on television, they hear it on radio, and what they want to hear is solutions. They're tired of hearing about so-and-so did it, or it's their fault. You know, even the news breaking out of D.C. right now, the House is suing the president. I can't imagine that's really playing well with the folks in the middle, those folks that we really need to succeed, the swing voters. They want to know, how do we move forward, and how does this help us? So a lot of us refer to the voter that we're after as Movable Marge. Movable Marge is the woman in the middle who is not paying attention to politics. She is probably really, really busy. She's got a job. She's probably got some kids or some family that she's taking care of. She could have more than one generation that she's taking care of. But some of us have polls, some of us don't. So what we're trying to do is use the poll as a roadmap if you've got it. But I think the very basic question that you always need to ask yourself when you're talking to people is, why does Marge care about what I'm talking about? If you can't answer that in one question, you probably shouldn't be talking about it. What you need to do is make people feel something. We so often feel like if we just give people a lot of facts and figures, that they will come around to our side. The reality is that people who vote typically vote because they vote with emotion, something they feel. They feel a connection. That's not to say you shouldn't be using facts and figures on a limited basis, but the reality is that people in Colorado typically vote with their emotion. They go and ask their neighbor, their friends, how they're going to vote, and they figure that out through that way, not through a spreadsheet. I think most important, use language that they can understand. If you're talking to them, do not ever use acronyms or bill numbers, things that are insider kind of stuff. They don't know what you're talking about, and you just need to meet them where they are, not where you want them to be. So some of the things we know from the polling that we have done here in Colorado is that social justice is not a term that people like or relate to. Equality, maybe a little less so. What really connects with people is fairness. They believe that there should be fairness in the world like we all do, and they don't understand what social justice means. They kind of know what equality means, but it's not, to them it's almost like a buzzword for somebody else gets more attention than I do. What they want to know is that if they play by the same rules, they have a shot at succeeding, they have an opportunity. They want everyone to pay their fair share, so they want the folks at the very top, that 1%, to pay their fair share in taxes. They also want the very vulnerable and poor to have to pay their fair share to become part of the mainstream that we all share as well. They want to think that their hard work is going to be rewarded, and there is a sense in the world that somehow that has gotten out of whack, and that even if they play by all these rules, they haven't been rewarded. So just understand sort of where that landscape is as you start to talk to voters. Again, opportunity, and these are some of the things that they do believe in. Opportunity is huge in Colorado's mind right now. They want to believe that everyone gets a shot. Not just the people at the top, not just the people who have money, whose parents had money, but that if they play by the rules, get a good education, get a good job, that they have the opportunity to get to be successful. Education is a big part of that. It's a huge part of it, especially among Hispanic voters. and like everybody else, jobs in the economy. I think that we need to note over and over again that in Colorado we are very fortunate that Colorado's economy is booming and that we are doing quite well. We're moving ahead. Our leaders have done a good job in rebuilding the economy that fell apart in 2008. That doesn't mean that we're where we need to be or where these folks need to be. They know that there's still a long way to go because they're still struggling. But we are headed in the right direction in Colorado. I think giving working families a fair chance at the future is what they want to hear, is that at least there is something to work toward and that they are not going to get hit over the head. This is another pillar that they believe in, freedom. It's both economic and social, to live the life you want and make your own choices. To use an example, and this may not always pertain to everyone's race at the county level, but people want to live and let live. There is a certain where the liberals meet the libertarians in Colorado, and they believe that people should have the right to not have government interfere on personal decisions like choice, that people should be able to pursue economic success without government interference. And so I just sort of be aware that that's the general idea of where people are coming from. They believe that the Republicans impose their views to a much greater level than Democrats do, that they want to superimpose whether it be religious or economic. There is a sense that the Republicans want to impose their views on other people. For progressives, the issues that work for us, and again, this may not always work for every level of government, but the right to be able to choose whether it's abortion or contraception, those kinds of personal decisions, and not have government interference. 61% believe in marriage equality in Colorado. That's the latest polling that we've seen from Quinnipiac. And they really, they favor Democrats because they understand that the other side is denying science and denying the facts. So those are the issues that really work for us. You may have to kind of massage those a bit to work in at the county level, but these are things that people really believe in and believe that government should not be a part of. Responsibility, again, this is the sort of independent Western nature. Everyone does their fair share. You support yourself, you support your family, that you are a part of your community and you make it better, that you believe in your country. But I think this one is uniquely progressive, that we need to hold big corporations and banks and polluters responsible. Here in Colorado in particular, we all believe that, and this cuts across education levels, economic levels, and both Republican and Democrat, that the outdoors adds to our way of life and is a part of our lifestyle. So I think holding polluters responsible is a big piece without the sort of tree hugger overreaching connotation. The issues that work for us are fair taxes, that everybody should pay their own way, that education and the environment are important to us, and clearly the climate is, again, people understand in a very visceral way other than their base that there is climate change going on, that is a very scientifically based thing, and that will work for Democrats every time. Again, when we talk about appealing to voters, think about appealing to voters on the emotional level. Do not do it on a statistical argument. I've seen this happen over and over and over where people bring out polls, and the reality is that Marge, that movable Marge woman, she doesn't have time to listen to all of that. She wants to hear something that appeals to her emotion, that makes sense in her life. You want Marge to be on your side, not the other side. She wants your argument to be aspirational and positive, and you want to offer her a chance, not a guarantee. Voters have been lied to over and over and over, that lots of politicians have offered guarantees, or if you do this, that will happen. What is a much better, much more successful message is, you know, economic recovery hasn't happened for everyone. So if you say, gee, Colorado has had 28 straight months of economic growth, and isn't that great for you? And that you is the person who is still getting food stamps, who has a disabled child, you can't offer that guarantee. What you can say is, Colorado offers a better chance at you succeeding than many, many other places, and this is why. Or your county offers a chance at success for this reason. So for them, I think you have to define that big vision of why it's important that you, the county, you know, has a better answer than the other side. So it's that visionary, aspirational message. So one of the things I think that we do a lot is there's two parts to messaging. Part of it is science. So we poll a lot of things and we bring it to our candidates and we say X will work. In this case, let's take a tested message was, we'll make the economy work for us, all of us, just that piece. That piece, when we tested it, will make the economy work for all of us, period. The Republicans won on that by more than double digits, more than 10%. When we added not just the wealthy, we win that message by more than 10%. So the science is very important of those messages. You need to understand exactly what goes into it. If you say, we're going to make the economy work for all of us, that's a Republican message. If you add on not just the wealthy, that is a heavily Democratic message that people support. Sometimes when we test messages, we do it in a very wonky, you know, economic, policy-driven kind of wording. And then we tell you, oh, this will work just fine. But it's not how we talk in daily conversation, especially someone like Marge, who's got 2 kids that she's trying to raise, and she may be doing work at home and trying to clean the house or whatever she's trying to do, multitasking that we all do every day. You have to think about, how does that translate to her? How do you get through to her? Because those tested messages, if they're in words that don't resonate with them, so if we're talking about, say, a stagnant economy, that doesn't mean much to Marge. You should be talking about our community not having enough jobs. That's how you ought to translate it. So sometimes you're going to get these polling messages. You need to make sure you're not wandering outside the lines, but that you are making sure that it is something that's conversational, that cuts through to the movable marges of the world. That's sort of what I'm saying about message discipline is only good if the message is delivered. Because if Marge isn't hearing it, if you're saying stagnant economy instead of, you know, our community doesn't have enough jobs and that's why our high school kids aren't going on to college, or they're leaving the community because there's nothing to do here, that's how you have to translate it in your mind and into your community, as opposed to just the polling messages. But you have to maintain, this is the art part, you have to maintain that original intent of the tested messages, because that's important. You can't say, well, that's not how it works here. These are tested messages, and that is how it works here. You just have to translate it so that you maintain that part of the message. But there's some wiggle room there so that you can say it in a way that Marge gets it and that the message is delivered. I think that's sort of it in a nutshell. I want to make some just some other points from the polling that we had recently. This is Colorado polling. I think that the pain points for folks is that they still see the economy as not being great. They think that the jobs that are being created are not jobs that are jobs that can sustain a family. The cost of living, I heard the other day from someone who said that we really haven't kept up with even the 1985 cost of living in Colorado. So when the people say that they're feeling that pain, they really are feeling that pain. Again, people feel like the rewards aren't coming for those who play by the rules. There used to be that sort of American dream of you raise your kids, you support them, you send them to school, you send them to a good school, they go to college, they get a good job. And they don't see that happening anymore, and they're really feeling the squeeze. Their aspirations primarily revolve around being able to have a good retirement, to live debt-free, to have good jobs at a fair wage, to be financially prepared for unexpected expenses, and to be able to send their kids to good schools for a brighter future. So I think that what works for us is what we're seeing on the Republican side is that they feel like the Republicans are forcing their beliefs on other people, that they don't believe in the live and let live, that the golden rule still works for most people, that personal responsibility is key, that they want to see some integrity in government again. In Colorado, and this is very unique to Colorado, there is a love of outdoors that crosses every socioeconomic group and partisan lines, and is something that we should talk about a lot. And there is something about the respect that they feel has been lost within politics, and so I think the more that we can talk about and demonstrate that we have the respectful candidates, the more successful we will be. So I think that's kind of what we've seen from the polling. I don't know if there's any questions or...
Yeah, so what we'll do right now is, because we have a small group with us today, and I really want you guys to benefit from some of the discussion that we're having here. Take some of these ideas that Ellen has talked about today and think right now about how this applies specifically to your race. I know we have, it looks like we've got a couple commission candidates. We have an assessor candidate here. I believe we have a sheriff candidate with us. You know, the idea behind this is, and this entire training series was that we can't tell you how to be the next clerk and recorder for your county or the next sheriff or the next coroner, et cetera, but we can give you an idea on what you're up against this election cycle. For those of you that are in the Denver metro area and along the Front Range, being able to have a message will be very difficult to penetrate the different media markets this year because of the number of candidates as well as the ballot initiatives that are out there. It's going to be very difficult for you to break through some of that noise. And one way that you can do that is by figuring out what it is people are caring about, who these voters are, who are the marges that are out there that you need to go talk to, and then coming back and being able to tie your message to part of the statewide message that's getting out there. And a lot of it is about this idea that there's a middle class squeeze, which is really important. And maybe you know, you kind of take a little bit to think about it and how it directly applies. One thing that I read looking through this polling is that we've kind of touched a little bit on it, but you know, people aren't looking for a handout or anything like that. They're not, you know, they're not looking for a free ride. In fact, they have a great deal. Voters in Colorado have a great deal of pride in the hard work that they put into their lives. You know, they just want to make sure that they are getting the equal shot And so, that term fairness is something that we've been instilled since we were children. And it is definitely something that voters can relate to. And, again, I've got this slide up here. I wouldn't talk about social justice. You even get tricky when you talk about equal pay or equality and that kind of thing. It loses its meaning. But fairness really, really does resonate.
Well, I think there's a sense that something's out of whack with the very wealthy and the very poor, and I think to some extent they're right, that there really hasn't been that sort of push to develop the middle class that we've had in the past in this country. And so they sense that, and to the extent that you can reassure them that you'll be fair, you'll be even-handed with everybody, that goes a long way in reassuring them that something's right with the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so too. Does anybody, Bob, do you have any?
Yeah, I have some comments. I had a very strong message on development and economic goals. I shared that our family had created over 500 jobs in Colorado, and our property has created $200 million in local taxes. So very clearly, I had a lot of experience doing that, and it didn't seem to resonate. It might have been that they thought we were just really rich people, which we're not.
Well, and I think one thing is figuring out ways that you can also tie your personal story to this, giving examples of fairness, talking about it as a core value, sort of takes you outside of that limelight. But one thing that is a great example here is also understanding some of your weaknesses too when you're discussing messaging. And I think that's something that's hard for candidates to look at. It's hard for anybody to talk about their weaknesses. I sure don't like to talk about mine. But being able to identify them is going to also help you with that personal narrative. Because let's face it, if you are able to, and we've talked about this in the last couple of training sessions, I encourage you guys to look at doing a mail piece or some sort of targeted communication out to voters that you can really make sure is an effective use of funds, because we all know how hard it is to raise them. But the other thing too is that these personal messages and stuff are what you're going to be delivering at the door. And part of your job is to, make those voters feel comfortable with you as an individual. And as we said in a couple slides on here, talking about, having that emotional connection to the voter and making those voters feel inspired. I bring this up a lot of times because I worked on the Obama campaign, but early on, when the Obama campaign was deciding to have their first message of change that we can believe in and discussing the idea of hope, one thing that was so successful about that was that it was personal to everyone, and it meant something to everybody individually. And at this level, on the down ballot, being able to connect with people is one way that you can, sort of come across the noise of all the other communications that people are going to be getting. So recognizing some of your personal weaknesses, talking about some of these values that voters feel are important, and being able to sell that through your personal story is going to come across incredibly genuine and really inspire people to check that box down there. Let me see if I can pull up the slide here that we were just talking about with Marge.
Yeah, and I think the important thing about Marge is that she wants, where you want to be with Marge is, you want her to think, oh, that person is on my side. Like, she has a circle of friends. She has like this circle of a little community around her. She wants to think of you as being in that circle. You want to be part of the Marge circle and your opponent outside that circle. He's one of us, they're one of them. And when you think about that, she really wants to feel, again, it's a feel that you're on her side and that you are part of that circle that's going to make her life better, whereas that other guy is going to be outside that circle.
So it's always a lot about personal connection. I'm not seeing any other discussion online. Feel free to use the raise your hand function or the chat box. Really quickly, I would like to pull up for everyone the training website that we have developed here.
I like to, can I just give one example, a real life example? So the wonderful late Ken Gordon he was the state senator for my mother's district in southeast Denver. My mother was a lifelong Republican and had never ever, I was the black sheep in the family, had never ever voted for a Democrat in her life. And Ken Gordon came to her door and talked to her for probably a half an hour about all of her issues, and she thought he was the most wonderful thing that had ever come to her door and voted for him. So I think that is like the perfect example of that connection. He just, and there was a guy that was not poor by any means. He came from a very wealthy background, but he had that ability to go to the door and talk to voters and maybe talk to them until they just gave up and voted.
Well, and I think that has a lot to do with also on the down ballot side of things. You know, I'm sure Mark Udall is going to get out and knock on some doors, but you guys own your county, right? That you know, you'll hear it that politics is local, but you are the one that will be able to draw in personal communities and networks of your voters and of individuals. You know, that's the advantage that you guys will have over Mark Udall and Governor Hickenlooper, is being able to really connect with your communities and your constituents and just the voters in the county in general. I've pulled up here on the screen our county candidate training website. We will send an email around tomorrow. You should have this website sent to you at least 3 or 4 times, because I'm pretty good about sending it out. On the left-hand side of this training site, you will see CDP staff information. If you need to get a hold of myself or Colin, our technology director, or our deputy data director, Maggie, we're always here to be helpful. Please use this as a resource. Furthermore, we have all of the PowerPoints that we have utilized throughout this training series available, and the messaging PowerPoint will be up there posted as well. And for those of you who missed the voter file training, or for those of you that are just interested in getting some more ideas, there are a handful of manuals on the left side of the screen under VAN that gives you a pretty good step-by-step instruction on some of the important things necessary for creating VANs. And on the very front page, if you do not have VAN access, please go ahead and click that link and fill out the request, and we will get that to you as soon as possible. Lastly, we record all of our wonderful webinars, and they are also on the left-hand menu there as you look at this. So please make sure you utilize this as a resource. I am going to go ahead and close out here tonight because we don't have any other questions from our team, but I would first and foremost like to thank Ellen for coming tonight to discuss messaging with us. It's incredibly important, making sure that you can come up with your personal story, as well as have a greater understanding of what the 2014 electorate is looking like and what they're going to be hearing from other folks. I'm sure for those of you that are watching TV, you've seen a lot of ads about women's health issues. You've seen, I'm sure, Mark Udall's ad about personal responsibility. These are all things that voters are thinking about. So it's important for you guys to take that perspective and see how you can tie some of that to your individual races. Without further ado, I will go ahead and end the webinar here and say thank you to all of you out there, not only for joining us tonight, but thank you for taking the opportunity to run for office. It is a very daunting task, and we cannot have good government without good candidates, good Democratic candidates that run. So please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. Please visit our training site, and I hope you have a good campaign season. We're here until, we're here even after November, so call us if you